October 2024. Rangers Dan Porter and Emily Chase hiked through the northern wilderness of Denali National Park, conducting their annual survey of bear dens before winter. The air was crisp, temperatures hovering around freezing. Dead leaves crunched beneath their boots as they documented each den's coordinates for the park database. Dan knelt beside a cavity beneath a massive spruce root system. Something orange caught his eye among the brown and gray debris. He reached in carefully, pulling out a bright orange pelican case, the kind used by extreme sports enthusiasts and wildlife photographers. Emily looked over his shoulder. "Is that?" Dan's face went pale. 3 years ago, the guy from Portland. The case held an iPhone 12 Pro. The battery was long dead, but the memory card remained intact. Back at the ranger station, a technician extracted the data. 127 hours of footage. Mountains, rivers, wildlife. Selfies of a bearded man grinning at the camera. And then, the final 14 minutes and 37 seconds. Before we begin the story, let us know in the comments which city you're watching from. We're really curious where you're tuning in from. And don't forget to subscribe. Before we begin the story, let us know in the comments which city you're watching from. We're really curious where you're tuning in from. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave a rating. The discovery reopened a case that had gone cold in September 2021. A case that began with a routine missing person report and ended with assumptions about bears and bad luck. But the contents of that phone would prove those assumptions catastrophically wrong. September 12, 2021. Ethan Collins drove his rental Jeep into the small town of Healy, Alaska, population just over 1,000. At 29 years old, Ethan had built a modest following as a wildlife photographer. 47,000 Instagram followers who admired his images of grizzlies in Yellowstone, eagles in the Rockies, and pumas in Patagonia. His dream was to create a documentary film about northern ecosystems. Healy sat at the entrance to Denali, a gateway town where tourists stocked up on supplies before venturing into 2.4 million hectares of wilderness. Ethan checked into a small motel on the main street. His room overlooked the parking lot and a mountain range that turned purple at sunset. The next morning, September 13, Ethan met Marcus Haywood at a local cafe called The Grizzlies Den. Marcus was 32 years old, a wilderness guide who ran a small YouTube channel with 3,200 subscribers. His videos showed trails. The next morning, September 13th, Ethan met Marcus Haywood at a local cafe called The Grizzlies Den. Marcus was 32 years old, a wilderness guide who ran a small YouTube channel with 3,200 subscribers. His videos showed trails, camping spots, and wildlife viewing locations throughout Denali. Marcus wore a plaid flannel shirt and a thick beard that made him look older than his years. They sat in a corner booth. Marcus spread a topographic map across the table, pointing to various routes with a calloused finger. If you want eagles, the southern ridge is your best bet this time of year. Salmon still running in the creeks. Ethan leaned forward, studying the map. He circled an area in the northwest sector with a red marker. "What about here? I saw some photos online of eagle nests in that area." Marcus's expression shifted slightly. He shook his head. "Too remote, no cell service, and the bears are really active there right now, feeding before hibernation. I'd stay away from that sector." Ethan made a note on his map. M said no, he wrote, beside the coordinates. After the meeting, Ethan drove to Frontier Supplies, a gear shop on the edge of town. The owner, Ray Tolliver, was 28 years old, thin and bespectacled, with nervous energy that made him talk fast. His family had run the shop for 2 generations, but Ray had only recently bought it outright from his aging father. Ray rang up Ethan's purchases: backup batteries, bear spray, freeze-dried meals, and additional topographic maps. "You're the photographer, right? Marcus mentioned you might stop by." Ethan nodded. "Looking for good spots to film eagles." Ray pulled out a map identical to the one Marcus had used. He pointed to several locations. "The southern ridge is solid, but if you want something more dramatic, the northwest has some incredible nesting sites. Just be careful, it's serious wilderness out there." Ethan tapped the same area he'd circled earlier. "This is the spot I'm interested in." Ray hesitated. Marcus didn't recommend that area? He said it was too dangerous. Ray shrugged. "Marcus tends to be overcautious. I've been out there. It's beautiful. Just respect the wildlife and you'll be fine." Ethan paid in cash and loaded his gear into the Jeep. That evening, he posted on Instagram a photo of his equipment laid out on the motel bed. The caption read, "Tomorrow we go dark. No cell service for 3-4 days. Wish me luck finding the perfect shot." His sister Jenna commented within minutes, "Be safe. Check in as soon as you can." September 15, 2021. Ethan woke before dawn. He packed his Jeep methodically: tent, sleeping bag, camera equipment, food supplies. The iPhone went into its orange Pelican case, waterproof and shockproof. Ethan had learned the hard way after dropping a previous phone into a river in Montana to protect his equipment. At 7:42 a.m., he sent a text to Jenna. "Heading out. Should be back by the 18th or 19th. Don't worry if you don't hear from me." Jenna replied, "Love you." Get amazing footage. Ethan drove north on the park's highway, then turned onto a dirt access road that led to the trailhead. He parked the Jeep at 9:15 a.m. and began hiking. His phone captured video of the first hour: tall spruce trees, a family of ravens, a creek rushing over smooth stones. At 11:03 a.m., he filmed himself. Day 1. The light is perfect. I can already tell this trip is going to be special. By early afternoon, Ethan had traveled 8 kilometers from the trailhead. He was officially off the marked trails now, navigating by compass and GPS. The forest grew denser. The silence became absolute, broken only by wind through pine needles. "Wait," Ethan's voice on the recording. "Is this marijuana?" He moved closer, filming the entire setup. Approximately 400 square meters of cultivated cannabis plants, a sophisticated drip irrigation system, bags of fertilizer stacked beneath a camouflage tarp. This was no small operation. This was commercial-scale cultivation, worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. Ethan continued filming, unaware he was being watched. At 2:12 p.m., footsteps became audible on the recording. Ethan turned the camera toward the sound. A male voice, calm but firm. "Hey, buddy, you look lost." The camera jostled. Ethan's breathing quickened. "I'm just hiking, taking photos." "That's private property you're filming." "I didn't see any signs. I'm sorry, I'll leave." "Put the camera down." The recording continued. Ethan's voice rose. "Look, I don't want any trouble. I'm just going to head back the way I came." "Put the camera down." A pause. Then Ethan, more forceful. "I have the right to be here. This is a national park." "You don't understand the situation you're in." The next sound was rustling, movement, raised voices. "Get away from me!" More rustling, a sharp crack, like a branch breaking. Then silence. The phone had fallen into the undergrowth, lens pointed at the forest floor. It continued recording for another 43 minutes, just footage of moss and dead leaves and distant bird calls. Then the battery saving mode kicked in and the recording stopped. The phone lay where it had fallen, its orange case gradually covered by falling leaves and dirt. Rain came, snow came, seasons passed. The phone remained, its memory card holding evidence of what happened on September 15, 2021. September 19, 2021. The owner of the Jeep rental company in Healy called the local sheriff's office. Ethan Collins had not returned his vehicle. The rental was 2 days overdue. A deputy drove to the trailhead and found the Jeep exactly where Ethan had parked it. The keys were gone. Inside the vehicle, investigators found Ethan's wallet, his backup camera, and a topographic map with several areas circled in red marker. One notation stood out. Eagle Nest, M said no. Jenna Collins received a call from Alaska State Troopers at 3 p.m. on September 20. "Your brother has been reported missing. When did you last hear from him?" Jenna, who was 27 years old and worked as a graphic designer in Portland, felt her stomach drop. "September 15. He said he'd be out of cell range for a few days." Did he mention his specific route? Just that he was going into the park. He wanted to photograph eagles. The official search began on September 21. Rangers, volunteers, search and rescue teams, and 2 helicopters combed the northwest sector of Denali. They followed probable routes from the trailhead. They checked known camping spots. They looked for any sign of Ethan Collins or his equipment. Marcus Haywood joined the search party. He spent 12-hour days hiking through areas he'd recommended against. "I told him not to go to the northwest," Marcus said to a reporter from the Anchorage Daily News. "Too remote, too dangerous." Ray Tolliver also volunteered, though he stayed primarily at base camp, helping coordinate supplies. When interviewed, Ray said, "He seemed like an experienced guy, knew what he was doing. I sold him good equipment." The search continued for 12 days. Helicopters flew grid patterns. Dogs tracked scents that led nowhere. The assumption was straightforward. Ethan had encountered a bear, or had fallen, or had gotten lost and succumbed to exposure. Denali was unforgiving. People vanished in its vastness. On October 3, 2021, the official search was suspended. Ethan's parents held a press conference. His mother, Carol Collins, spoke through tears. "Ethan loved nature. He respected it. If the wilderness has claimed him, then at least he died doing what he loved." Jenna Collins refused to accept that conclusion. She flew to Alaska on October 5 and stayed. She rented a small apartment in Healy and took a job at the local library. She spent her free time hiking, searching, asking questions. Marcus saw her around town occasionally. "I'm sorry about your brother," he said one day at the grocery store. Jenna looked at him with hollow eyes. "Everyone keeps saying it was a bear, but Ethan knew how to handle bears. Something else happened out there." Marcus didn't respond. He paid for his groceries and left. The case went cold. Winter buried Denali under snow. Spring came, then another summer, then another fall. Life in Healy continued. The motel rented Ethan's former room to other tourists. The library where Jenna worked cataloged new books. Marcus continued leading tours. Ray's gear shop thrived. He'd even expanded, purchasing the building next door. No one spoke about Ethan Collins anymore, except Jenna. She kept a wall in her apartment covered with maps, photographs, and timelines. She marked every location the search parties had covered. She noted every detail from the investigation reports. And then, 3 years and 23 days after Ethan vanished, Rangers found the orange pelican case in a bear den. The discovery changed everything. The phone arrived at the Alaska Bureau of Investigation Laboratory in Anchorage on October 10, 2024. Senior forensic analyst Kevin Lowe handled the extraction personally. The iPhone itself was corroded beyond repair, but the memory card had survived 3 years of moisture and temperature fluctuations thanks to the Pelican case's seal. Lowe connected the card to his workstation. Files began populating his screen. 127 hours and 16 minutes of video footage, spanning September 12 through September 15, 2021. He started at the beginning, watching at double speed. Ethan driving through Alaska. Ethan hiking. Ethan filming wildlife. Then came the final recording. Lowe slowed to normal playback speed. The footage showed the marijuana plantation clearly. Hundreds of plants in neat rows. Professional irrigation equipment. This wasn't some amateur's backyard grow. This was organized cultivation worth potentially $500,000 at street value. Then the voice. Lowe played it 3 times. "Hey buddy, you look lost." "Local. The confrontation escalated quickly. Ethan's protests, the sounds of struggle. Then, silence." Lowe called Detective Sarah Wayne of the Alaska State Troopers. "You need to see this immediately." Detective Wayne arrived within an hour. She was 42 years old, a veteran investigator with 15 years of experience in major crimes. She watched the video twice without speaking. When it ended, she sat back in her chair. "This isn't a missing person case anymore," she said. "This is a homicide investigation." The next call went to Jenna Collins. She arrived at the Anchorage Police Headquarters on October 11th. When Wayne showed her selected portions of the video, nothing graphic, just Ethan speaking to the camera earlier in the day, Jenna broke down. "I knew it," she whispered. "I knew something happened to him. Everyone said bear attack, accident, got lost, but I knew." Wayne gave her a moment. "We're going to find out who did this." After 3 years? That phone is evidence. The person on that recording made mistakes. We're going to identify him. The investigation officially reopened. Wayne assembled a team. 2 additional detectives, a digital forensic specialist, and a liaison from the DEA, since the marijuana plantation made this a potential federal case as well. DEA agent Marcus Clark reviewed the footage. Commercial cultivation in national parkland is usually connected to organized groups, but this setup looks more local, probably 2 or 3 people managing it. Wayne pulled the original case file from 2021. She reviewed every interview, every search report, every piece of evidence. The topographic map found in Ethan's Jeep caught her attention. The notation M said no beside the northwest sector coordinates. Marcus Haywood, the guide who'd advised Ethan against that area. On October 13, Wayne drove to Healy. The town looked exactly as it had 3 years earlier. Same storefronts, same mountains in the distance. She found Marcus working at Frontier Supplies, Ray Tolliver's gear shop. Apparently, Marcus had taken a job there after his guiding business had slowed down. Marcus looked up from restocking shelves. He was 35 now, still wearing flannel, still bearded. Detective Wayne? Is this about Ethan Collins? We found his phone. Marcus's expression didn't change. Where? In the wilderness. It contained video footage from the day he disappeared. Now, Marcus reacted, a slight tension in his shoulders. Video of what? I'd like you to come to the station to answer some questions. They sat in an interview room at the Alaska State Trooper Post in Healy. Wayne placed a recorder on the table between them. Tell me about your meeting with Ethan Collins on September 13, 2021. Marcus spoke calmly. He wanted recommendations for photography locations. I suggested the Southern Ridge. He was interested in the Northwest sector, but I told him it was too dangerous. Why specifically did you advise against the Northwest sector? Remote area, heavy bear activity that time of year, no cell service. If something went wrong, help couldn't reach him quickly. Wayne pulled out a printout, a still frame from Ethan's video showing the marijuana plantation. She slid it across the table. Did you know this existed in that area? Marcus studied the image. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. No. You never went to the Northwest sector yourself? I've been all over Denali, that sector included, but I never saw any marijuana plants. Wayne let silence fill the room. Marcus didn't fidget. He maintained eye contact. I was working. I had a tour booked, a couple from Vancouver, the McDonald's. They wanted to see the Southern Ridge. Wayne made a note. The entire day? The tour ran from 9 a.m. until about 1 p.m. After that, I went home. Can anyone verify you were home? Marcus hesitated. I live alone, but I remember I was home that afternoon. Wayne thanked him and ended the interview. After Marcus left, she immediately contacted the McDonald's in Vancouver. They confirmed the tour had occurred, but noted it ended around 1 p.m., not later. Marcus had no verified alibi for the critical time frame. The next step was cellular tower data. Wayne submitted a warrant for all phone records from the tower servicing the northwest sector of Denali. The data came back on October 16. Three phones had pinged that tower on September 15, 2021 during the afternoon. Ethan Collins's phone, multiple pings between 11 a.m. and 3:14 p.m., then nothing. Marcus Haywood's phone, one brief ping at 3:47 p.m., lasting 38 seconds. Ray Tolliver's phone, one ping at 4:14 p.m., lasting 19 seconds. Wayne stared at the data. Both Marcus and Ray had been in that remote area, despite neither mentioning it in their original statements from 2021. She brought Ray in for questioning on October 17th. Ray arrived with visible anxiety, fidgeting hands, avoiding eye contact. He was 31 now, still thin and nervous. The gear shop was clearly doing well. Ray drove a new truck and wore an expensive outdoor jacket. Tell me about your interaction with Ethan Collins on September 13, 2021. Ray spoke quickly. He came into my shop, bought supplies. I sold him maps, batteries, bear spray, freeze-dried food. Standard purchases for a solo hike. Did you recommend any specific locations? The Southern Ridge, same as Marcus probably told him. It's the most popular area for wildlife photography. Wayne slid the plantation photo across the table. Did you know about this? Ray's face went pale. What is that? A marijuana plantation in the northwest sector, where Ethan Collins disappeared. I don't know anything about that. Wayne leaned forward. Your phone pinged a cell tower near that location on September 15, 2021 at 4:14 p.m. Why were you there? Ray's hands trembled. I don't remember being out there that day. Cell towers don't lie, Ray. Maybe I sometimes drive around, checking out areas for the shop, scouting trails to recommend to customers. Without hiking? Just driving? Yeah, sometimes. Wayne changed angles. In October 2021, 1 month after Ethan Collins disappeared, you made a $35,000 cash payment toward purchasing this building from your father. Where did that money come from? Ray's lawyer, who'd been silent until now, interjected. My client doesn't have to answer financial questions without. I saved it, Ray said quickly. I'd been saving for years, and my brother loaned me $15,000. Wayne made notes. We'll verify that with your brother, but that still leaves $20,000 unaccounted for. The interview ended inconclusively, but Wayne now had 2 suspects with means, opportunity, and no solid alibis. She also had evidence of significant cash appearing in Ray's accounts shortly after the incident. The forensics team worked on the audio from Ethan's phone. On October 19th, FBI audio specialists in Quantico enhanced the recording using sophisticated filtering algorithms. They isolated background sounds that weren't audible in the original. At timestamp 1:23, behind the confrontational voice, a brief electronic beep, the distinctive chirp of a two-way radio. At 13:51, another beep, followed by barely audible words, all clear on Ridge. The person who confronted Ethan hadn't been alone. At least 2 people had been coordinating via radio, likely taking shifts guarding the plantation. But the enhanced audio revealed something else. At timestamp 13:58, after the sounds of confrontation, a whispered voice, "Damn it, Danny, what did you do?" Neither Marcus nor Ray had that name. Wayne expanded her search. She requested complete contact lists from both men's phones. One name appeared frequently in both lists: Daniel Crawford. Danny. Daniel Crawford was Ray's cousin. He was 27 years old in 2021, now 30. His record showed 2 prior convictions for drug possession, both resulting in probation. He'd lived in Healy until November 2021, then moved to Juneau. Wayne pulled tower data for Daniel Crawford's phone. On September 15, 2021, his phone pinged the Northwest Sector Tower continuously from 2:30 p.m. until 4:45 p.m. He'd been there during the entire incident. On October 22nd, Wayne drove to Ray's shop unannounced. She found him inventory in the back room. We need to talk about Daniel Crawford. Ray dropped the box he was holding. What about him? He was in the Northwest Sector on September 15, 2021. So were you. So was Marcus. Want to revise your earlier statement? Ray's lawyer arrived within 20 minutes. They huddled in private conversation. When they emerged, the lawyer spoke. My client is willing to cooperate in exchange for consideration on charges. Wayne nodded. Tell me everything. Ray's voice shook as he spoke. Marcus and I started the plantation in spring 2021. It was Marcus's idea. He knew the remote areas where no one ever went. We invested about $15,000 each in equipment and seeds. Danny helped with setup and maintenance. He'd go out there a few times a week to check the irrigation, watch for animals, make sure no one stumbled on it. That was Danny's shift. Marcus and I were supposed to stay away that day, but something went wrong. Danny called Marcus on the radio, said there was a problem. Marcus drove out there. Then Marcus called me, said I needed to come too. What happened when you arrived? Ray closed his eyes. Ethan Collins was already dead. Danny said the guy had filmed everything, was going to report it. They'd argued. Danny said it was self-defense, but what? But I don't think it was. I think Danny panicked and did something terrible. Wayne processed this. And you and Marcus helped cover it up? Where's the body? I don't know exactly. Marcus and Danny took care of that part. Somewhere in the forest, away from trails. I stayed with the vehicles. And the plantation? Wayne obtained an arrest warrant for Marcus Haywood. Officers found him at his small rental house on the outskirts of Healy. He didn't resist. In the interrogation room, Marcus initially maintained his innocence. Then Wayne played Ray's statement. Marcus listened in silence, his expression hardening. Ray's telling the truth, Marcus finally said. But it wasn't murder. Danny was protecting our operation. That photographer was going to destroy everything we'd worked for. So you helped hide a body and destroy evidence. I made a mistake. I should have called the police immediately, but I was scared. I owed people money, serious people. If I'd lost that investment, they would have. I couldn't let that happen. Where did you bury Ethan Collins? Marcus gave coordinates. A search team deployed on October 24. They found the remains approximately 1.2 kilometers from where the phone had been discovered, buried under rocks and moss in a shallow depression. Dental records confirmed the identity. But they still needed Daniel Crawford. Juneau police located Danny at a construction site on October 25. When officers approached, he bolted. He made it half a block before being tackled and handcuffed. In custody, Danny refused to speak without an attorney. His public defender arrived and advised cooperation. They have phone records, cell tower data, witness statements from your co-conspirators, and forensic evidence. You can make this easier or harder on yourself. Danny finally spoke on October 27th. I was guarding the plants. This guy just appeared out of nowhere with a camera, filming everything. I told him to leave. He refused. He said he was going to report us. I couldn't let that happen. So, you killed him? Wayne asked. It wasn't planned, we argued. He tried to push past me. I stopped him. Then I called Marcus. How did you stop him? Wayne didn't push. She had enough for charges. The details of the violence didn't matter for the prosecution. The outcome was clear. The investigation wrapped up in early November 2024. 3 men faced charges. The marijuana operation had been worth an estimated $400,000 in revenue. For that amount, Ethan Collins had died, and 3 men had destroyed their lives trying to cover it up. Jenna Collins flew back to Anchorage for the arraignment. She sat in the courtroom gallery watching as Daniel Crawford, Marcus Haywood, and Ray Tolliver stood before the judge. All 3 wore orange jumpsuits and handcuffs. After the hearing, Jenna spoke briefly to reporters. I spent 3 years knowing something was wrong, knowing my brother didn't just get lost or attacked by a bear. Everyone told me to move on, to accept it, but I couldn't, and now we know the truth. The trial began in March 2025 at the federal courthouse in Anchorage. Spring came late to Alaska that year. Snow still covered the mountains visible through the courtroom windows. The case drew significant media attention. A wildlife photographer murdered over marijuana. 3 men who'd hidden the truth for more than 3 years. Daniel Crawford faced the most serious charges: second-degree murder, cultivation of controlled substances, and concealment of a corpse. Marcus Haywood and Ray Tolliver were charged as accessories after the fact, along with drug cultivation charges. The prosecution presented their case methodically. They played the audio from Ethan's phone in open court. The jury listened in silence to the final moments of the recording, the confrontation, the raised voices, the sudden quiet. DNA evidence placed Daniel Crawford at the burial site. Soil samples from his boots, stored in evidence from a 2021 traffic stop 2 weeks after Ethan's disappearance, matched the composition of soil where the remains were found. Cell tower records mapped all 3 defendants' movements on September 15, 2021. The timeline was devastating. Daniel present during the incident. Marcus arriving 27 minutes later. Ray arriving another 27 minutes after that. Financial records showed the marijuana operation's profitability. Marcus had paid down $42,000 in gambling debts between June and October 2021. Ray had purchased his father's building. Daniel had made cash deposits totaling $18,000 in the months following Ethan's death. The defense attorneys worked with limited options. Daniel's lawyer argued for manslaughter rather than murder, claiming the confrontation had escalated unexpectedly and his client had acted in fear rather than malice. Daniel Crawford is not a violent person, the defense attorney told the jury. He has no history of violent offenses. He was a young man in over his head, trying to protect what he saw as his livelihood. When confronted with someone who could destroy everything, he panicked. This was a tragedy born of fear, not premeditation. Marcus's attorney emphasized his client's cooperation. Marcus Haywood made a terrible decision in the aftermath of this incident. He helped conceal a crime, but he did not commit the crime itself. He arrived after the fact, faced with an impossible situation, and made the wrong choice. He has since cooperated fully with investigators. Ray's defense followed similar lines. A man who arrived late, who hadn't participated in the violence, who was now being punished for loyalty to family and friends. The prosecution countered with a simple argument. 3 men had conspired to profit from illegal activity. When that activity was discovered, they'd eliminated the witness and hidden the evidence. They'd let Ethan Collins's family suffer for 3 years, wondering what happened. They'd participated in searches while knowing exactly where the body was buried. Jenna Collins testified on the 4th day of trial. She described her brother's experience as a wilderness photographer, his safety protocols, his excitement about the Alaska trip. She described the 3 years she'd spent in Healy, searching for answers while everyone told her to give up. "I knew my brother," she told the jury. "He wouldn't have gotten lost. He wouldn't have made fatal mistakes around bears. Something happened to him. And these 3 men knew what it was. They knew, and they said nothing." On the 7th day, the prosecution called an unexpected witness, a hiker named Klaus Weber, a German tourist who'd been in the region in September 2021. Weber had returned to Alaska for vacation in 2024 and seen news coverage of the case. He'd contacted authorities with information. I saw two men on September 10, 2021, Weber testified through an interpreter. They were not on tourist trails. They carried large backpacks and had two-way radios on their belts. I thought perhaps they were park rangers, but they wore no uniforms. Can you identify these men? Weber pointed to Marcus Haywood and Ray Tolliver. These two. The defense attorneys objected strenuously, arguing the identification was unreliable after 3.5 years. But Weber had taken a photograph that day, a landscape shot that incidentally captured two distant figures. Enhanced analysis of the photo matched Marcus and Ray's builds and clothing from other photos taken that same week. The evidence was circumstantial but damaging. It established that Marcus and Ray had been actively maintaining the plantation in the days before Ethan arrived. The trial lasted 3 weeks. Closing arguments came in late March. Outside, Anchorage was finally warming. Inside the courthouse, the atmosphere remained frozen. The prosecution's closing was direct. This case is about choices. Daniel Crawford chose violence when confronted with exposure. Marcus Haywood and Ray Tolliver chose concealment over justice. They chose profit over truth. For 3 years, Ethan Collins' family suffered, not knowing what happened to their son and brother. These defendants knew. They knew every single day. The defense's closing arguments emphasized reasonable doubt, lack of premeditation, and the defendant's cooperation, but the evidence was overwhelming. The jury deliberated for 9 hours over 2 days. On March 28, 2025, they returned with verdicts. Daniel Crawford, guilty of second-degree murder. Guilty of cultivation of controlled substances. Guilty of concealment of a corpse. Marcus Haywood, guilty of accessory after the fact to murder. Guilty of cultivation of controlled substances. Guilty of concealment of a corpse. Ray Tolliver, guilty of accessory after the fact to murder. Guilty of cultivation of controlled substances. Guilty of concealment of a corpse. The sentencing hearing occurred 3 weeks later. The judge reviewed victim impact statements from Ethan's parents, his sister, and friends. She reviewed the defendants' histories and the circumstances of their crimes. Daniel Crawford received 25 years in federal prison without possibility of parole for 15 years. Marcus Haywood received 8 years in federal prison. Ray Tolliver received 6 years in federal prison, reduced due to his early cooperation with investigators. All 3 would be required to pay restitution to the Collins family, a total of $2 million, divided among them based on their assets and earning potential. After sentencing, Jenna Collins stood on the courthouse steps. Reporters surrounded her with cameras and microphones. She wore black and held a photo of Ethan. "Justice doesn't bring him back," she said quietly. "But at least now we know the truth. At least now these men will face consequences for what they did." A reporter asked if she felt closure. Jenna shook her head. "I don't think closure exists when you lose someone like this. But there's something, an ending, I guess, a confirmation that I wasn't crazy for believing something was wrong." She flew back to Portland the next day. She'd lived in Healy for 3 years, working at the library, hiking the trails, keeping her brother's memory alive in a place where most people wanted to forget. Now she could leave. The small apartment she'd rented was cleared out within a week. The wall of maps and photographs came down. The timeline was packed away. Jenna donated most of her Alaska gear to a local outdoor program for underprivileged youth. Marcus Haywood began his sentence at FCI Sheridan in Oregon. In prison interviews, he expressed remorse but also resentment. "We weren't bad people. We made one bad decision that spiraled. If that photographer had just left when I told him the area was dangerous, none of this would have happened." Ray Tolliver served his sentence at FCI Inglewood in Colorado. His gear shop was sold to pay legal fees and restitution. His family stopped visiting after the first year. He spent most of his time in the prison library, reading books about the wilderness he could no longer access. Daniel Crawford went to USP Victorville in California, a higher security facility due to the violence of his crime. He refused all interview requests. According to prison records, he spent most of his time alone, declining to participate in programs or activities. The marijuana plantation site was thoroughly documented by federal agents, then left to return to nature. Within 2 years, the forest had reclaimed it completely. The irrigation lines decomposed. The disturbed soil settled. Young spruce trees began growing where cannabis plants had once stood in rows. Detective Sarah Wayne received a commendation for her work on the case. She retired from the Alaska State Troopers in 2026 and moved to Washington State to be closer to her grandchildren. In Portland, Carol and Robert Collins created a memorial fund in their son's name, supporting young wildlife photographers through equipment grants and safety training. They never returned to Alaska. Carol died in 2027 from cancer. Robert scattered her ashes in the Columbia River Gorge, one of Ethan's favorite photography locations. The case became a cautionary tale in wilderness safety courses, though not for the reasons most people expected. Instructors emphasized that the greatest danger isn't always from nature. Sometimes it comes from human desperation and greed. In 2028, a documentary film crew requested permission to interview the Collins family. Jenna declined. "My brother's death isn't entertainment," she said. "It's not a story with lessons. It's just loss." The case files were sealed after the appeals process concluded in 2027. All 3 defendants' appeals were denied. The convictions stood. 3 years and 23 days. That's how long the iPhone recorded nothing but darkness in a bear den, holding evidence that would eventually bring 3 men to justice. The technology designed to capture beauty had instead captured truth, not the majestic truth of wilderness Ethan had sought, but the harsh truth of what humans will do when their interests are threatened.